I was holding a mop when the payroll guy blurted that I'd been donating half my paycheck, the fluorescent lights buzzing like they were embarrassed for him. And before I could answer, a second voice cut in from the doorway, deeper, colder, a single word that sounded like a verdict. Half. I turned, and there he was, Grayson Reed, in a suit that looked welded on the kind of Chicago billionaire who treats silence like a currency, and he stared at me like a cell on a spreadsheet had learned how to talk. "That's you," he said. And I said yes, and when he asked where it was going, I told him. Bright Steps Fund after school. Kids' books, bus passes, the little things that are actually big. And he said my office now, so we rode the mirrored elevator that makes you feel like you're standing next to your own ghost. And up there with the lake laid out like black glass, he leaned on his desk and asked me to explain it like he was slow. How I make $2,400 a month and give away 12, why anyone would do that. And I told him as plain as rain that when a smart kid wants to learn but can't afford pencils, it feels like theft, not money theft, future theft. And if my little bit keeps one kid in the room, that's enough. And he laughed, that dry laugh. Rich men learn before they learn how to hug, and said enough isn't a number, and hope doesn't pay, Tom Ed. And he wanted to know if I'd still give if I had his kind of money, and I said no, I'd give more, and he didn't soften. But something paused like a machine hearing music for the first time. Then he waved me out and warned me that if Bright Steps was a scam, I'd answer for it, and I said that was fair because it was. Next morning he'd already checked, of course he had. The website was plain, no glossy promises, just kids holding beat-up paperbacks and smiling like someone remembered their names, a ledger. With my donation showing up like clockwork, and by the copy room he found me and said, "It's legit." And I said I didn't ask for an endorsement, and he said, "I know. Which is why I'll match you quietly. No press." And I swear, the corner of his mouth almost remembered how to smile. And I went back to work, because mops don't push themselves. Word traveled like it always does in glass buildings, sideways and fast. A VP in heels pitched me as a brand moment, a human interest garnish on the corporate stake. And Grayson shut it down so cold, the windows fogged, saying she's not a campaign, she's a compass. And suddenly, people who had never said my name knew it, which is the kind of attention that makes your skin itch. And then he asked me to sit in on a tiny meeting, not as a prop, as an advisor. And I told him, I don't advise, I mop. And he said, maybe both, and that's how they get you. Not with flattery, with a door. You're half convinced you're not allowed to use, you know what I mean. I said I'd do one thing one a Saturday morning reading Circle in a South Side church basement that smelled like coffee and crayons. And a boy stuck on Asteroid sounded it out in my palm, syllable by syllable. And when he got it, he laughed, the kind of laugh you feel in your ribs and across the room. I could sense Grayson watching, not like a boss, more like a man remembering he had a heart. And for a minute the world was quiet in a good way. Then came the first punch the way they usually come. Small, mean, perfectly timed. A grainy photo through a diner window catching us in a booth, me in my uniform, him in that suit, the headline saying, CEO courts janitor for optics. And by lunch, the legal department was choking on words like hierarchy and optics. And by dinner, an anonymous email to the board called me a liability. And by dessert, there was an emergency meeting. I was definitely not invited to while I sat downstairs reading a scholarship. Thank you from a kid named Shay who wrote thank you for believing. I'm not dumb, yeah. That happened. And upstairs, they argued over whether I was a precedent or a problem. And when the vote ended, Grayson walked out with his jaw set and wrote me 3 words. I'm still here, and 2 days later, he resigned with no speech at all. Packed a second-hand laptop into a small office above a barbershop and met me there with a binder that said First Bell Alliance, like he needed a name that sounded like morning partner, not savior, small checks, not big promises. And I said yes, even though I still had a 4 a.m. shift, because saying yes felt like air. The months after that ran hot. We funded bus passes, library cards, Wi-Fi hotspots, refurbished laptops. We paid for 20 kids' eyeglasses because reading hurts when the world is blurry, and none of it went on a billboard because results don't need a filter. They just need neighbors who talk, and neighbors talk, and donors laughed at the size of our checks. But principals cried at the timing, and then the machine turned again, sharper this time, digging up my eviction from years back, and a stupid teenage shoplifting charge that I had already paid for, in all the ways that count. And the comments came in like hail, "Stay in your place, scammer puppet." And then a rental van clipped me outside a school and didn't stop, and we changed the locks at the office and kept going anyway. Because fear is loud and purpose is louder. We chose to expand where it would matter and hurt Baton Rouge. Heat you can hold in your hand. Politics. You can trip on a city council that delayed our permit. With a smile, a spray painted. Go back to Chicago on the plywood of the old post office. We were turning into a reading hub, and Reverend Albright opened his fellowship hall and said, "Use the space," and the first night 30 kids came, and Miss Odette came with cornbread and paperbacks that had raised grandchildren. And a boy named Trey fell asleep with a book on his chest, like the first good nap after a storm. And I know it sounds small, but that's the point. Small stacks on small stacks can lift a house. The twist came the way respectable sabotage always comes, with letterhead. A state audit using words like irregularities and concerns. And I sat on the steps outside the hub with sweat haloing my shirt, and decided to tell my own story out loud, brought the cameras to the dust, and didn't sweep, told them I've been broke, invisible, angry. I have never stolen 1 cent from one child. If you want to audit us, start with the library cards and the bus routes and Miss Odette's cornbread pan. We don't exist to impress corporations. We exist to outgrow them. And while the microphones were still warm, a burner email pinged from Lauren Pike, daughter of the board member who'd tried to muzzle us back in Chicago. She had receipts, internal messages proving the audit was a plan, not a process, and we handed them to reporters who care more about documents than drama. And the story broke open, and the audit folded without an apology, and that was fine because I wasn't collecting those. The night we reopened, we left a strip of the old graffiti visible and built around it a kid named Ty, painted a girl in sneakers, holding a book like a shield. And at the bottom, he wrote, "She kept the stories alive." And I cried in a bathroom with a broken lock, because joy can short-circuit the body. And someone asked if this was a victory, and I said no, it's a beginning again. And we started a training track. We called Porch Light, because that's what welcome feels like, teaching teenagers to run their own circles, read a budget like a map, speak at City Hall without apologizing first. And our map got wider, but our rules stayed simple. Hire local, listen more than you talk, fix what you break, leave the lights on when you leave. People still wanted to know what happened to Grayson, and the true answer is he learned how to wear a hoodie and pass out name tags and sleep a full night. He writes down exact sentences people say when they think no one is listening and reads them when he forgets why we started. He sets up chairs and hauls boxes, and he is fine, which is different from famous, and it looks good on him. We took more hits, a think tank paper, written by a man who has never graded a stack of spelling quizzes. Said women like me manipulate men like him to launder radical agendas through feel-good programs. A state rep tried to sneak language into a bill to starve small literacy orgs by capping private matches. And on the day of the vote, kids in 4 cities sat on courthouse steps and read out loud, not chants, chapters. And the bill failed by 1 vote, and the senator who switched said on the record, "I won't burn the bridge." I crossed, and I taped that sentence inside my closet like a blessing. Here's the part you're waiting for, the ending that lands and keeps echoing. There is no bow, there is work. We still sweep up glass from time to time. We still get letters that say, "You don't belong here," and we still open the doors anyway. I still sit on a rug with third graders and read Charlotte's Web until a kid asks if words can be a place to live when you don't have one. And I say yes, and a boy who plays tough nods like he's been holding that yes in his mouth for years. And sometimes I take out the note my mother wrote when her hands were shaky, and she told me, "Baby, when the world tries to shrink, you make a library of yourself," and I carry that like a spare key. So talk to me. Is giving away half your paycheck brave or reckless? Where's the line and who gets to draw it? Should a CEO walk away from a boardroom to stand with someone the world calls expendable? What do you call that choice? Have you been told to stay in your place, and did you listen? Or did you move the furniture? You know what I mean? Drop your truth in the comments. Push back if you need to tell me who handed you your first book or your first second chance hit. Like if you believe impact beats titles. Subscribe for more stories where justice doesn't shout, it shows up. And if this shook something loose, share it with the one person in your life who still thinks kindness is naive. Let them hear how loud quiet work can be.